The best part about cave diving is that there are unlimited stories, but the worst part about cave diving is that there's unlimited stories. So I'm going to be reacting to some of the dumbest deaths in caves.
It was June 24th, 1967, and 10 cavers were about to enter Mossdale Cavern to help clear some of the deeper passages and map them out. The two leaders of the group had already explored this cave before, which reassured everyone else. This particular cavern was known for its tight spaces and the very few areas where a person could fully stand.
I feel like that's already a sign that you shouldn't go into that cave, because what if someone gets stuck and then you die?
After a few hours inside, 4 of the cavers realized how difficult the cave actually was and decided to return to the surface. They noticed a cloudy sky, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The remaining cavers continued their descent until they reached the far Marathon Passage, which measured only 18 inches by 12 inches, with a small stream of water flowing along the bottom. Everything seemed to be going well, and the group on the surface soon noticed that it had started raining, so they took cover. Initially, the rain did not seem concerning, but the cavers inside began to notice rising water levels. When the water became alarmingly high, they decided to end the day's work and head back, even though
I feel like the first sign that you should get out is when you see one single drop of water.
they were still 3 hours from the entrance. Meanwhile, the surface group spotted something terrifying. A lake of water had formed around the cave's entrance.
That should have been the first concern when they saw that it started raining. They could have thrown something down there to get out so they will survive all the rain instead of letting the cave just flood like.
The cavers inside had no idea how much water was about to flood the cave. The surface group ran to get help, while the cavers frantically tried to reach higher chambers. However, the water continued to rise, pressing toward their faces. Rescuers and hundreds of volunteers worked tirelessly, pumping water out of the cave and pumping oxygen inside, hoping that the cavers had found a safe chamber. Unfortunately, every one of the cavers drowned. Shaft sinkhole tragedy. It was May 28, 1973, and a group of 9 diving experts had planned a dive at Mount Gambier's shaft sinkhole. This sinkhole had a unique feature. There was only a tiny opening leading to a cave with a lake 20 feet below. From this opening, a beam of light went down into the cave and onto the lake, which was extremely helpful for the divers' orientation. This beam was visible throughout most of the cave, unless divers ventured too deep into one of the 2 side branches. Everyone initially agreed that they would stay within a 200-foot maximum depth range so they could remain in the main chamber and still see the guiding light. This was their only plan. On the second day, however, 4 divers planned to go to the western section of the cave.
So you're telling me they chose to go down the path where they couldn't see? I bet that's the way they die.
Aiming for a depth of 250 feet, which would have been a new record. This was deeper than initially intended and posed a significant risk because in 1973, divers were still using regular air cylinders rather than mixed gas tanks. For this reason, they had to be more cautious as they went downwards because nitrogen narcosis might have settled in. As they went down, the increasing pressure would have pushed the nitrogen into the bloodstream, producing a state of consciousness that is similar to when people are drunk. Keep in mind that these divers were not very experienced in cave diving.
Wait, but at the start, didn't it say that expert cave divers went down the cave?
A group of 9 diving experts had—
Wait, so they were experts, but they weren't? You know, no. That makes so much sense. I completely understand what they mean.
They were more accustomed to standard open water scuba diving. This added even more risk to their plan. They started going downwards into the western section of the cave, and one experienced diver noticed that nitrogen narcosis was kicking in, so he immediately went back out. Several of them followed him and went back to the surface as well, but 4 of them kept going, determined to set the record and get a quick look before resurfacing.
Is that actually all you get for completing a new record? Like, is that really all you get? Just like a little medal that goes around your neck, or is it just like a badge, or do you get something more than that? Because I don't know about you, but I'm not risking my life for just that little thing that will go on my shirt.
After a minute or so, the group at the surface became concerned, realizing the 4 divers would soon exhaust their air supply. A few returned to the cave to find them, and they discovered a flashlight and a camera on the bottom, but no trace of the divers. There was a problem that we haven't yet mentioned: silt. The movements of the 4 divers stirred up the long settled silt into a sand cloud that would take a lot of time to settle back. This reduced visibility to less than an arm's length, removing any hope for orientation for the underwater divers. Without being able to see anything, oxygen running dangerously low, and nitrogen narcosis kicking in, the 4 divers drowned.
If you know that makes you feel like you're drunk, would you think that swimming... Do you think that cave diving underwater while drunk is a good idea? Because if you do, then that's perfect. But if you don't, then, it's not perfect.
Jacob's Well tragedy. It's November 23rd, 1983, and two students from Texas State University named Richard and Clark are about to enter Jacob's Well, an underwater hole that leads to an underwater cave. This hole seems relatively shallow, around 25 feet, and many people try to touch the bottom and then come up. However, this is just a deceiving appearance because it actually leads to another underwater cave with 3 chambers. The first 2 are relatively open and easy to get through, but the third one has a really small squeeze to get into it. If you manage to squeeze through, you'll enter a room that is 10 feet tall, and you'll see a really small hole at the farthest edge, too small to pass through. This small tunnel was just 2 feet in diameter, and 2 years prior, 2 people died in it because after they managed to get through, a rock slide filled with gravel blocked them inside.
If you knew that, why would you go in the cave? Like, that makes no sense.
Now, getting back to our 2 students, they were fairly experienced in normal diving, but not in cave diving, and they were trying to get their instructor certification in open water diving. Their instructor, Don, was an incredibly skilled and experienced diver, and he was the one who removed the 2 bodies we just talked about. He used to constantly warn everybody to stay away from Jacob's Well since it's deadly, and he even tried to cover up the small hole that leads to the 4th chamber with some cement, but other divers reopened it and left a message that said, "You can't keep us out."
Forget about them, Don. Just let them die.
Don himself almost died in Jacob's Well. When he tried to enter the 4th chamber, a gravel slide trapped him in the tunnel. He almost resigned himself to death. His tank was empty, and he had swallowed some water when his survival instinct kicked in, and he started rapidly moving until he cleared enough gravel to escape. When he did, he saw his diving colleague extending a regulator for him to breathe. As he started resurfacing, the air inside his body expanded until he reached almost 4 times his normal body size. By the time he broke the surface, he was screaming in pain. His belly was huge because his stomach had completely ruptured.
Okay, this is really not adding up. If your expert diving instructor almost died because of something that you're about to go in, what makes you think that you should go in there?
Stories caught the attention of Richard and Clark, who wanted to take a look for themselves, even though they didn't really know much about cave diving. On November 23rd, 1983, they went into Jacob's Well and reached the 3rd chamber, where the small hole was located. Richard removed his tank to get through the hole and started going in while holding his tank. When Clark removed his own oxygen tank and tried to get in, he saw Richard's face and noticed Richard didn't have the tank with him anymore and was suffocating. Clark quickly reached for the regulator and gave it to him, letting him breathe again. They started passing the regulator back and forth as they made their way out, and somehow they managed to get through the tight squeeze of the 3rd chamber. They then began making their way toward the exit until a terrifying sound caught their attention, a clank from their oxygen tank. Not only did this mean they'd hit a wall with the tank, so they were going the wrong direction, but it also meant the tank was almost empty. They realized they'd run into the false chimney in the
I didn't even realize that. If you look at the map and you see that there are many directions that you can go in and get stuck, why would you even think about going in there?
1st chamber, a tunnel that looks like it leads to the surface, but is actually a dead end. Clark managed to swim back to the surface and gasped for air after covering an incredible 75 feet in a single breath. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Richard, who remained behind and drowned. When Clark called the police for assistance, Don the instructor himself showed up.
What are the police gonna do? Turn their cop car into a submarine, go down there and grab the body that's already dead?
And was stunned to see his students there.
Doing this video gave me mental brain damage, so if you think you can watch this video all the way through without getting it, then like and subscribe. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next reaction. Bye!